Hi, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving into the world of Adobe Lightroom. If you're a new photographer looking for a raw file editor, Lightroom is a game changer. Because of its powerful tools and integration with other Adobe products and third-party plugins like Topaz. Since I shoot all of my images in RAW format, I need a tool like Adobe Lightroom to bring my images to life. Let's start off with what Lightroom does. At its core, Lightroom is Adobe's answer to processing RAW files that come out of cameras. Think of Lightroom and these other programs as digital darkrooms. Raw image processing is like taking a film negative, that is the original, unedited version of a picture, and making it into a finished product. Now, back in my college days when we used film, we had physical tools to make a finished image. Things like enlargers and filters and different papers and tricks to dodge and burn light and dark areas of the image. This would give us a final image on paper. But once it was printed to paper, the process was done and further edits were difficult or impossible. The original image, the film negative, stayed pristine and unchanged during this process, and we could start over with a new edit if we wanted to. Now I think of raw images as that film negative we would start the process with, the original source of our picture, and programs like Lightroom as the developing process in that darkroom. If you still save your images as Jpeg, they are like the finished photo print you get back from the developer when you would send your film in to get processed. Once you pick up your folder of precious photos, the process is all done, and you're just getting the final product. Because the edits done in RAW editors don't change the actual file, though, or the digital negative, if that makes it easier to understand, you can redo your work and start over again if you mess up. Now, editing a JPEG image is like trying to edit that paper-printed image, and it can leave you wanting better results. That's why pros almost always shoot in RAW format. They want the digital negative, not the final print, when they start editing. If you plan on editing your photos, RAW is really the only way to go. Now, I should point out that Lightroom is not the only RAW editor you can use. If you purchased your camera from one of the big three, Canon, Sony, or Nikon, you have access to these companies' raw image processing software. So Canon gives you Digital Photo Professional, or DPP, and Nikon developed NX Studio for Nikon RAW files. Sony gives you Imaging Edge Desktop. Outside of OEM software, there are a lot of third-party programs like Capture One and Develop Persona inside of Affinity Photo that also allow you to process your raw images. Since most of my workflows and best practices are designed around Adobe products, however, I use Lightroom exclusively. When I started using Lightroom, I really didn't have a firm understanding of what it did or how it did it, so I got really frustrated and I actually stopped using it for a long time. It took me a while watching YouTube videos like this one to figure out what a basic workflow should look like inside of Lightroom. Once you've got Lightroom installed, you'll want to import your photos. I won't go into the file structure that I use today, but I do have a very specific way I organize all of my files for professional and personal use. This ensures that I can always find my photos quickly based on job, customer, location, or date. Now, we'll assume that you have a location where you store your photos, and that's where we're going to import them from today. Make sure you're on the Library tab in Lightroom. Then click on the Import button in the lower left. Select the images or folder of images you want to edit. You can import photos directly from your camera's memory card, but I like to dump all of the photos off of my memory card onto a specific folder for that job or that trip, and then import them into Lightroom from that long-term storage location. If you choose to import photos directly from your memory card, make sure to change one setting in Lightroom during import so that a copy is kept locally on your computer for editing purposes. If you don't import a copy to the computer and Lightroom, as soon as you remove your memory card, the photos go with it and you won't be able to edit again without the card. Choose either Copy as DNG, Copy, or Move to make sure your image edits don't just live on your memory card. After you import your photos, the next thing you're going to want to do is some rudimentary organizing. So Lightroom offers lots of organizational tools like tags, flags, and star ratings to sort your best shots. Most of the time after a photo shoot, I'll go through my raw images and flag the ones that I plan on using as deliverables. This way, I'm not focusing on individual photos I don't plan on using after I've taken hundreds or perhaps thousands of images. If you like the idea of adding tags to your photos for easy searching later on, this is a good time to do it since Lightroom allows you to add tags you create on the spot or tags that you've used previously. Tags get stored with the metadata in your image, so it helps when organizing and searching later on. Oftentimes, I'll include tags with the specific address of the property or the client I'm working for, as well as a genre of photography, like real estate, low light, landscape, wildlife, etc. Organizing your photos after you've done this for a few months or years can become quite a challenge, and we'll have other videos that specifically address long-term storage solutions. So get in the habit of doing the groundwork when you first edit, then organization becomes easier later on. Now for the fun part, editing the photos. So Lightroom's Develop module is where all the magic happens. This is found in the upper right-hand corner of Lightroom Classic. So click on that now. On the right-hand side, you'll see all of the tools available to you in our digital darkroom. I like to look at how the tools are organized as a workflow. At the top, we have things like cropping, leveling, and basic editing settings. When I start to edit, I'll begin at the top and work my way down to other tools as I make adjustments. This helps me not to miss steps, and if I need to go back to a specific tool later, it's easy. So first is the exposure tool, which adjusts the brightness of your photo. When you shoot RAW, you can expect to be able to fix overexposed and underexposed images using this tool. I've overexposed images up to 2 stops and been able to recover highlight and shadow details in images I thought were ruined using this tool. Next is contrast. So contrast enhances the difference between light and dark areas. This is very commonly used, and most editing platforms have this function. It adds a little pop to your image. But don't go too crazy with contrast. You can really make the image look overprocessed using this one tool alone. There are a lot of different ways to add contrast to a raw image, but this is a great starting point, and lots of times it's the only tool you'll need to add depth to your photo. Next is highlights and shadows. This allows you to fine-tune the bright and dark areas of your photo. Your camera tries to find a happy middle ground between shadow and light in your image, and because of that, you'll almost always need to make adjustments in shadows and highlights in order to bring the image closer to what you actually saw when you took the picture. These are the two most used tools for me no matter what type of photography I'm shooting. I almost always bring down the highlights, and I almost always bring up the shadows to make a more balanced image. Next up is white balance. If you're shooting RAW, white balance really doesn't matter in camera settings because you'll be setting it in Lightroom as you edit. This is one of the main reasons I shoot in RAW for my real estate photography. Lighting inside and outside of homes is always so challenging, the camera almost always gets it wrong. Auto white balance may get things close, but I always have to adjust white balance in post, especially for shots in low light. RAW editors like Lightroom have presets that you can mess around with to get white balance dialed in, as well as an eyedropper tool that you can use to pick a very specific area of your photo that is neutral so that Lightroom can then set the white balance accurately. I found that this is usually the most accurate way to do things with white balance for me. If you get your white balance wrong, your image and all the colors in it are wrong. So some photographers use inaccurate white balance to their benefit and intentionally shift colors one way or another, which can be great for more creative or artistic shots. But just understand that white balance is how you get colors right in your image. Now there are other more advanced tools in Lightroom that we'll go over in other videos, but it's worth pointing out that they're here. The first one is the tone curve, where you can adjust different values in your image using a linear graph. Our color mixer and color grading tools also allow you to really have an unlimited control over individual color channels. And then there are more often used tabs like detail and lens correction. So detail will allow you to increase or decrease sharpness and control noise in your image. I will say that I use denoise a lot on my real estate images that are shot in low light, because the denoise function in Lightroom is so amazing it saved images I thought were completely unusable. Lens correction should always be turned on, especially for modern mirrorless cameras, because they have quite a bit of lens distortion built in, which allows manufacturers to make lenses smaller and lighter. These imperfections are corrected in software in the camera, but you can correct them further by turning on lens correction in Lightroom. Next, we have the transform tools, which are hugely important to me. The absolute do not break rule in real estate photography is that all vertical lines need to be vertical. If you look at a poorly done real estate photo, none of the lines are vertical, and things that should be horizontal are not. The transform tool will allow you to do this automatically, but also have infinite control over the variables to get your lines straight. Lastly, we have effects like lens blur, effects, and calibration. which we won't go over in this video, but they are available to use as well. Lightroom has powerful masking tools that allow you to isolate a subject quickly, so you can mask out a face or a body or a building, and target your edits to just that item. Adobe has also incorporated advanced AI to remove imperfections like spots and dust. So Lightroom AI has some impressive remove tools which are still in beta, but worth trying out if you're looking to remove someone photobombing your family portrait or power lines in your beautiful sunset shot. The last basic tool we're going to talk about in our overview of Lightroom is the cropping tool. There are lots of photographers who will tell you to never crop your images. Now, this is great advice, and I would agree that cropping done in post is not the best way to approach your photography. You should work to compose the image how you want it to look in camera while you're taking the picture. If you don't have a super long lens and want to fill up a scene more with your subject, if at all possible, move closer to your subject. This is called zooming with your feet. With that being said, there are plenty of times when you don't have the ability to get closer, so you have to do things in post-production. Just remember, when you crop, you're reducing the number of megapixels in your image and therefore the resolution of your photo, because you're actually removing sections completely. The only time I really crop these days is with wildlife photography, when even a 600mm lens isn't long enough to get close enough to an eagle sitting on a branch. If it's unsafe to get closer to a large animal like an elk or bison, ignore the zoom with your feet rule. In some situations, cropping is all you can do, but use it sparingly where possible. Now let's say you've made all of your adjustments and it's a photo that would make Ansel Adams proud. You're ready to use this photo on social media or send it to be printed, but there's no save button. Where is your masterpiece saved so that you can share it with the world? Because we never actually edited the original raw file and we just made digital adjustments, we need to export it to its final state, which is a difficult concept to internalize for the new photographer. Before I really started using Lightroom extensively, this process really frustrated me. I would do all of my edits, and then I would get mad because I didn't realize I needed to actually export it into a file format that could be used elsewhere. If I wanted to send it to a printer to be blown up and printed, or if I wanted to share it with someone online, I couldn't figure out why sharing the original file didn't have any of my edits. It took watching a YouTube video like this one for me to realize that you need to export the final image, including all of your adjustments that you've made during this process, into a final file format like Jpeg. The process is actually pretty simple, and it starts with going to the File menu and choosing Export, which will open a dialog that asks you where you want the image stored and the file format you want. This is one of the superpowers of shooting raw images. No matter what I do to this image, it literally takes 2 clicks for me to reset it back to the original if I mess it up beyond all repair. Until I export the image, though, nothing is set in stone. Nothing has been done to the original image, or our digital negative, and only the exported image is locked into its final state. And that's a wrap on our Adobe Lightroom basics. I hope you found this guide helpful and you're excited to start editing your photos with Lightroom. We'll have plenty of tutorials on the channel that go into more depth on individual tools and processes, so stay tuned for future videos. Like Photoshop, Lightroom is incredibly powerful, and it can take some time to learn. But once you understand the basics, you can start experimenting and developing your own style and workflows. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more photography tutorials and tips. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.